The Reformation came to the English-speaking world. Carrying on the tradition, welcome to the White Horse Inn.
For the past several weeks, we've been discussing very aspects of God's grace and election, and today we'll be talking about an opposing view, Arminianism. What does it mean when people say, oh, you're a Calvinist or you're an Arminian? We're not going to look at this just historically. We're going to take a look at the practical consequences of Arminianism as opposed to Reformation theology. Here it's not just Arminianism opposed to Calvinism, but here the whole Reformation theology is taken into view as Arminianism launches its canons. Actually, what we know as the 5 points of Calvinism come out of a reaction against the 5 points of Arminianism issued early in the 17th century. In 1618, the Synod of Dort issued its famous canons against those positions from which the popular expression 5 points of Calvinism or tulip emerged. An international synod, the meeting included delegates from the established churches of England, Scotland, and Ireland, as well as the continental churches of Switzerland, France, Germany, Hungary, Bohemia, and the Netherlands. At least publicly, King James I of England was as eager to extinguish Arminianism from his realm as the Dutch. Arminius and his followers called for a revision of the Reformed Confession and Catechism, believing that they gave too little place for human decision and moral effort. He presented a petition then to church and state in the form of 5 articles. The church countered with its own 5 articles, giving rise to that popular acronym. Although Arminius had been questioning Beza's formulation, Beza was the successor to Calvin in Geneva, and he studied under Beza, he had been questioning his formulation of predestination for some time, but it was actually not that formulation that was confessionally binding. But when Arminius, a minister in Amsterdam and professor at Leiden, student of Beza's in Geneva, expounded Romans 7:14, the fur began to fly. Arminius taught that when Paul here speaks of his own experience in terms of a chasm between God's perfect law and his own unrighteousness, the apostle must have been referring to himself before he was regenerate. But Arminius' senior cleric, Plancius and Gomarus, the leading Dutch theologian at the University of Leiden, had to investigate Arminius' teaching. Episcopius was to succeed Gomarus at Leiden, but he was also to become Arminius' successor, and hence Arminianism became a school within the Dutch church. Here's what the Remonstrants, or Arminians, said about election. Quote, "This decree has its foundation in the foreknowledge of God, by which he knew from all eternity those individuals who would, through his prevenient grace, believe, and through his subsequent grace would persevere, according to the before described administration of those means which are suitable and proper for conversion and faith, and by which foreknowledge he likewise knew those who would not believe and persevere." And therefore, clearly, the focus was on what we did, God knowing that in advance. Now, Arminianism has been embraced by a variety of people. For instance, John Wesley always said he couldn't embrace the doctrine of unconditional election because that would undermine the principal motivation for holiness, fear of punishment, and hope of rewards. We're going to be discussing this very important topic. Arminianism this is not just a debate among theologians. This is something that cuts to the quick of what it means to say Jesus Christ is sufficient as our Savior.